My pleasure to welcome Vista Equity Partners founder, chairman and CEO, and longtime Toigo supporter, Robert Smith. We are now, of course, confronting two viruses, COVID-19 and racism. How do you think business leaders in particular should be acting in this moment, and how can they translate their financial commitments into real change that's lasting?
How do you bring to bear the resources that you have control over? So if you're CEO of a public company and you're in, the broadband and cellular business, how do you use those resources in that capacity to, frankly, right some of the injustices? And I put forward a plan. It's called the 2% solution, to think about how do you drive 2% of income over 10 years in these sectors from each of the companies to really combat some of the injustice and imbalance. Our society is plagued with a number of deserts. There's at the highest level called the opportunity desert, opportunity for higher education, access to jobs, access to the capital structure, capital deserts, food deserts, healthcare deserts. And we have just some brilliant people who are in a number of industries and in companies that know what the actual solutions are. And if we get each of these companies and sectors, focused on, okay, how do I actually eliminate the broadband desert and the 36% of the African American communities that don't have them? Or don't have broadband access. And that will, of course, enable education, digital education, online education for the children, as well as doing work in delivering telemedicine. You look at capital deserts, 70% of African American communities don't have a branch bank, a major branch bank, and 65% of the mortgages for African Americans come through what are called the CDFIs, community development financial institutions, or MDIs, minority depository institutions, which I call the capillary banking system. And so by actually charging that banking system with capital, modernizing their infrastructure, it will enable their ability to deliver capital to small businesses as well as to the communities for home loans, home mortgages, et cetera. Bringing high quality thinking in these sectors gives us a chance, frankly, in the next few years to not just level the playing field, but give us the opportunity to accelerate so long as we provide this sort of infrastructure and support.
I've been struck by the idea that there are so many people that are taking to the streets. This time around, I talked to a lot of white people who were telling me this is the moment. It was George Floyd's video that really spurred me to say, okay, America is not treating people equally. How do you define allies? And in that same breath, how do you think allies can help accelerate the change that needs to happen?
These allies have come out and, to your point, the silence of the pandemic and us being at home made us all really hear and see and feel. This allied community goes from, I call it suburban housewives, to leaders of the largest corporations in America. I think it has awakened the humanity in all of us. And also, frankly, has got us all to think about what solutions can we bring to bear and make them real and tangible. But it's because it created an awakening in all of us as human beings that made this now happen. Now, of course, there's factions on the ends of these of the protests that are causing problems and causing reactions that are unfair and unjust to what the movement actually is striving for.
How can we get straight by learning the stories and the issues that people are facing on a daily basis?
Yeah, the advantage of living in our time versus 50 and 60 years ago is that we can share stories instantly. The dynamic of social media, immediate access, technology, infrastructure gives us a chance to share those stories in terms of what's happening, but also to provide inspiration in other platforms. We have, I think, had Black History in 2 minutes with Skip Gates that actually walks through history and thoughts and moments and what they lead to in a way that's consumable by all people in the general public. We have to utilize our infrastructure of our people, our creatives, to use their voices and make their voices reach all people in a creative and interesting way. Educating our young people to think about these platforms as not only educational and informative, but as commercial opportunities for them to innovate and be entrepreneurs and drive forward value and hire and people and in their community to actually drive our stories forward and frankly tell the broader part of the American story to all people on the planet.
You're also a Black father. You have four children under the age of 7, as well as adult children. How are you able to talk about the killing of George Floyd to them? And how do you give them hope and understanding in this moment?
It's a challenge that every parent has when a child either bears witness or comes to an understanding that there have been unjust killings of human beings and taking of human life, and then unjust taking of a human life because that person has a certain skin color, even makes it more challenging. We're using tools and books. Ibram Kendi has just been marvelous in his over the last few years in his recitation of the plight of the African American in this country, from Stamped in the Beginning to How to Become an Anti-Racist, to actually children's books on anti-racism and how to raise an anti-racist child.
I also want to get a little bit more personal and ask you about your own experience. Have you ever had times where you feel racially profiled, where you feared for your life? And how are you navigating this world, especially as one of the nation's wealthiest investors? That doesn't, of course, shield you from any of this.
All African American business folks that I know, we talk about how often we are racially profiled and unjustly targeted and singled out, unjustly punished. And it has happened all my life. And part of my mission is to decrease or eliminate that for not only my children but all children in America, and frankly, children who look like my children. But everything from and I was actually having a conversation with one of my children about their experience at school, and how to some extent they felt that they couldn't talk about it. Every time we leave our offices, every time we get in the car, every time we drive to the airport, we are subject to that same dynamic. It is something that's very disturbing on the one hand, and on the other hand, part of what our role is, as we have excelled and achieved portions of the American dream, is to drive our efforts forward to level the playing field more often, more frequently for those who come behind us.
Why do you think a career in finance is a worthwhile pursuit, especially during the moment that we're living through?
In this world, it is capital that typically drives opportunity. We need to focus on ensuring that we are able to direct capital in ways that enable our communities to be more successful, to embrace the opportunities of progress, to create wealth, regenerative and systemic wealth. And I think we need to ensure that we drive as many of our STEM related and educated people into this field, because as we drive more capital into these industries, it will create an overall uplift for all of our economies by driving it into our small and medium businesses, educating our people, and frankly giving them an opportunity to really participate in the economy.
Thanks so much.